Hey everyone, welcome to episode 2 of Anxiety and Depression is Not the End. For the last episode, I briefly talked about, what are the things I did to get myself, out of that darkness. So in this episode, I wanted to kind of focus more on, for anybody that doesn't know my story and what I had to go through and how I got my anxiety and depression, because it's different for everybody. Everybody has their own reason on how they were able to get themselves into that darkness, right? So for my story, it happened back in 2016. We had an awkward ice storm that happened, near the end of winter. It was really, really close to spring, and I slipped on ice, and I fell and hit the back of my head, and I suffered a concussion, and that is definitely where it all started from. Prior to my accident, though, I can say that I was a little bit depressed, but it's something that I didn't realize within myself. I wasn't happy about where I was heading in my life, but the only difference was I didn't do anything about it. You know, and this whole journey that I went through made me realize what I needed to do in order to get my life on track, right? So that I can start, appreciating life more, being more grateful for my life, and most importantly, was to start working on myself, like a better version of myself. So when I slipped and I fell, I had to go through this concussion, and this concussion I didn't think of much at first because I thought that after I fell, after a week or so, I'd be back to normal, because the original fall that I had, it didn't seem like it was that bad, right? Until 2 weeks after, around, because I didn't want to work out, I didn't want to really do anything because I knew that my fall was pretty bad, so I just basically didn't do much. But then I thought everything was okay. I didn't go see the doctors or hospital or anything like that to see how bad it was. So I started working out again, and that night, after I woke up, I felt this tingling sensation all over here on the side of my head, right? Starting from up here, and it trickled down all the way down here. And at first I was scared, and I didn't know how to react to that. At first I thought it was just something that would go away the next day, right? But I waited and I waited and I waited, and after a few weeks, it was actually my daughter's birthday at the time. And I was hoping that, the symptoms would go away by her birthday. And I think that was the first day I realized. This was like about 2 weeks or maybe 3 weeks after the symptoms. I was waiting for so long. And I actually really started to feel something happening in here. Like you would say it was like almost like a chemical reaction, right? But it wasn't that bad yet, because I was getting scared. I was getting scared because I was afraid that it was going to be something that was going to be with me for the rest of my life. I already started thinking of that. And, and even after that, we had to drive over to Montreal, which is about a 6-hour drive from where I live, to my cousin's wedding. And I think that was when it even got worse because, the symptoms just wouldn't go away. I was driving. I remember my family was in the car, and I was driving, and I was like, I wanted to cry as I was driving, but I was holding it in because I didn't want to let anybody know how I was feeling, right? I didn't want to scare them. I really didn't. I just, because it was a wedding, I wanted it to be a happy family trip, right? But during the whole time I was actually there in Montreal, I was actually really, really sad. When I got home, after a few weeks after that, after our trip to Montreal, I decided I wanted to go see a chiropractor because I wanted to, I started to seek for help, but I still didn't go to to check myself in at the hospital or see my doctor or anything like that because, of course I didn't want to worry my mother or my family. So, I went to see my chiropractor, and he helped me so much. But, my anxiety, I started, the symptoms still didn't go away, even after all the adjustments. And I started to even get more scared and more worried. And there's this one day, and this was after about like maybe 2 months after I was seeing my chiropractor. Um, and the thing was, he told me that, everything was going to be okay, but the treatment was about a year long, right? And he said that he can get me back to normal where, I wouldn't have the symptoms anymore. And that gave me a lot of hope, a lot of hope that I was going to get better. But, there's this one day, it really, something really got me angry. Okay. And so I remember hitting the top of this chair. And right after I hit it, I felt this weird sensation on my back. And not only was my head tingling, but my arms and my legs started to tingle too. Okay. So I remember running into my room, and there was so much anger inside me, because I was just telling myself, why is this happening to me? And I snapped. And I talk about it before in some of my videos that it felt like, those glow sticks when you actually snap it and it starts to glow. That is the same effect that happened to me up here. I knew something changed up here. I could feel it. I could feel like, and I don't know if, for some of you that may have experienced it, when you can actually feel it, that something is not going right up here. Right? I could feel it. It was like fluid coming from my brain, and it just shot down through my entire body. And right after that, that's when I started to pace. I started pacing back and forth, all over my house. And, as each day passed, it got worse. Because at that moment, I was like, I just made my symptoms worse. First I had it on my head. Now I have it on my arms and my legs. And even if I probably go see my chiropractor, he probably can't heal me. And even if he did, it would take forever, right? Those are the thoughts I started to think. And the more I continued to think that way, the more my mind started to think more negatively. And it was almost like, every single day, it just seemed like I was just going backwards. I was definitely heading backwards. I was not, because I didn't see myself getting better at that moment. And I didn't even realize that this wasn't even the worst of it. This was just the beginning of how bad it was going to be, And I think the hardest part for me was trying to hide it away from my mom, And eventually it got so bad that I could tell my mother could see it in my face, like, what's wrong? Because she was asking me to go out for lunch. And I was telling her that I didn't want to go. And so I think she started to, see that there was something wrong with me, until I got to a point where I had to tell somebody. My brother was living in Hong Kong at the moment, and I live in Toronto, so he's on the other side of the world. I called him, or I messaged him, and I said, Pat, something's wrong with me, and I haven't told mom, and I don't know what to do. I was so scared, because I was telling myself that, and I knew that, before my accident, I was already a little bit sad, right? But this was like more than 10 times worse, right? And he said, I'm going to drop everything. I'm going to leave whatever I'm doing here in Hong Kong, and I'm going to take the next flight back to Toronto so I can come help you, And he tried. The quickest he got there was in less than a week. He left everything. He left his work and everything, and he came and he helped, and he wanted to do his best to help. So, I had that support. I had my family there, and everybody was there. My kids, my wife, everybody was there to support me. But, it just, when you're in that darkness, and some of you may already know this feeling, is that even though you do have that support system, you are still trying to figure out how to help your own self. Because the thing is, your mind is just constantly feeding you, right, or creating these thoughts that you don't even want to think about. But somehow, some way, it still penetrates your thoughts, your mindset and starts creating this world for you, and that's exactly what it did. Um, and it get to a point where I couldn't even control the way I was thinking. It was like an automatic thing. It was just like, when I woke up in the morning, the first thing I would think about was like, oh my gosh, my symptoms are never going to go away, and as I continued to think that way, I started to not take care of myself, because, at that point, I'm telling myself that, hey, you know what, I'm never going to heal. So what is the point of treating myself better? I didn't realize that during that time, right? What I was doing, the harm I was doing to myself, because everything was starting from up here, but eventually it led to me just not, you know, caring about myself, or I didn't even really know much about loving myself, honestly, during that time. But thank God I was able to experience what I had to experience so that I can actually understand what it is to actually love yourself. Because everything that I was actually doing during that time was I was hating myself, which was the complete opposite of what I should have been doing if I wanted to heal myself. So my brother came and for 2 weeks, and he tried to help me, and I could see in his face that he was in complete shock. He had never seen me in this situation before. I was so weak. I started to lose a lot of weight. I didn't care about a lot of things in life anymore. The most thing that showed up that was very obvious was that I didn't care about myself. He'd be like, he was making me all these like juices. He was juicing me up, and he was doing whatever he could to do it. But he was like, Roger, you got to snap out of this. I mean, like, you're stronger than this. But when you're at a stage where you feel like you're at your weakest, you just don't feel like you have strength at all. That life has finally been able to step on you hard enough that it makes you not want to continue to move forward anymore, right? So, this is what happened to me and how it all started. And this was just the beginning part. Remember, this was just me realizing that I was starting to get anxiety and depression, and I never ever thought I'd ever experience this in my life ever, but all these feelings and these emotions, they were all new to me. So if you are going through anxiety, if you just started and you're starting to feel like, something is definitely different about my life right now and I don't like it, right? And you start to recognize that it is some sort of depression or some sort of anxiety, and you're telling yourself, oh my gosh, is this it for me? Am I going to be like this for the rest of my life? And I'm going to tell you this because I was thinking of the exact same way. I was telling myself that I don't think I can ever heal myself from this. I'm so much in darkness that I don't think there is a way to heal myself from this, or to ever see my happiness or joy again. And the more I thought about how I wasn't ever going to heal myself, the more I wanted to give up, right? So, but I want to let you know that because you're experiencing this right now, it doesn't mean that you're going to be experiencing this for the rest of your life, okay? I see it now, that it was a chapter in my life that I had to go through. I learned a lot. I learned a lot about myself. I learned a lot about life. I learned how strong I was, okay? So if you are going through that right now, remind yourself that this experience that you're going through, even though it's tough, I know it's hard. I know it's tough to wake up in the morning and try to force yourself to do something positive, or to even tell yourself that you need to start believing in brighter days because you can't see it at all. That you have to remember how strong you really are, okay? What you're going through right now is testing you to bring that strength out that's hiding deep within you. It's gonna bring it out, and when your strength comes out and you see it, you're gonna realize that, hey, you know what? Life is tough, right? But I think I'm tougher. I know I'm tougher. And when you go through this experience and you're living it, right? When life throws another bad chapter at you, or throws a mountain in front of you, guess what? You're going to be prepared, right? You're going to be prepared to challenge it again. Okay. So for next episode, I'm going to dive a little bit deeper of how bad it really got for me, because it got really bad. Like, so many things happened to me. And these were just the initial stages of what led to me realizing that I actually was having severe anxiety and my depression was getting worse. And, eventually that led to me hitting rock bottom. So stay tuned for episode 3. I hope the information that I spoke to you today helped you a little bit. The more I speak about anxiety and depression, the more I speak about how I was able to heal myself from it, I think you'll be able to kind of understand that, or give yourself a little bit more hope that you can also do what I had to do, in order to figure out what I needed to do to accomplish that mission to find my light. So I will catch you in the next video. Next episode. If you haven't subscribed to my channel, please subscribe, and I'll catch you next episode. Take care. Bye-bye.